Mexico City, and then we had 2 plants, one near Veracruz, and these guys would send up drinking tequilas. But I really could never
You like
get into
Scotch?
the taste. I love it. Single malts are
Then
terrific.
I'm not saying that I think there's a parallel.
Do you? I just couldn't get
It's
it.
the whole distillation, and it's the whole way that then they're, it's.
I didn't find it that way, but maybe I'm just a narrow-tasted guy. And
Drink what you like to drink.
right, yeah, I mean, after all, how much can you drink? So you drink what you like to drink. Please tell me when you go live stream so that all this isn't being said. I have my mic on, as I should, as we convene. I mean, at least give me the. I don't know, the directions from the control booth here are a little uncertain. Well, I would say, Bonnie, if Stacy or Bob were going to make this meeting, they certainly have not appeared now. This? But that's a Tuesday thing.
Are we mic'd now?
Give us some sign, right, when you go live stream on this.
I just put back my, because my son said, I'm now again a voter in Cape May City,
Good,
and my wife,
good.
since I've been there 40 years, 45 years.
Yeah, we split our vote, although I probably should do the second vote, my vote here. Jeannie votes here, and used to before I retired, spent most of her time here, which made a lot of sense. I still vote up in Princeton, but, I mean, frankly, in fact, it's South Brunswick Township, which when we moved there had 16,000 people, now has 47,000 people, and my vote is worth like, like nothing, right? In Cape May, things get decided by two dozen
One
votes.
year I didn't vote in West Cape May because I was coming back from the overseas.
Single digits.
And yeah.
Single
and I
digits.
felt so bad because I hadn't filled out an absentee vote. But now I decided, yeah, I mean, this is where I work, this is where I make my living.
And about principal residences, if we sell the place in Princeton, I'm afraid that you know, I don't want to lose the exemption.
Well, you do enough for the city, you should do it. You're trying to.
Well, I mean, I think, but voting here is important in the
I think
sense
it's
that,
very important
I mean,
because you realize.
I mean, look at the size of our electorate. We're like under 3,000 full-time souls,
That's
we're
what-
under 1,700 on the electoral rolls, and it's dropping.
Right, so it's really, yeah. But I was amazed at how easy it is. You have to put your driver's license, and that's about it.
Unless you're my wife, who, when she registered here, was immediately challenged by Ed Mahoney as not living here. And she had to appear in front of a Superior Court judge.
For real?
For real. Oh, you remember.
Well,
You remember.
I can't
Who's
check
shocked?
to see
Really?
the live.
Of course.
What an idiot.
So,
Well, I've said that for a while.
I mean, I know him as a friend, but that's an idiot. That's
all right, it is now
It's vicious.
5:30,
It was vicious.
and let's get the show on the road. Just do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hopefully others will join us when they get here. First thing on the agenda is that we need to approve the minutes from the September 7th meeting, which I sent out a couple weeks ago.
And which we've read, and I will offer a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. One of the things I think we need to do with this, and we don't have to approve the notes that I
Well,
sent out.
we don't,
'cause
we don't, but I mean, I just would like to indicate that I've read them and I'm in agreement with what was said there. I think they accurately cover the discussion from our meeting, so they may not need to be adopted as minutes, but as far as I'm concerned, they're an authentic
Okay.
description of what we said.
One of the things I didn't include were the review of these pictures of the potential parking across from the Welcome Station. Bob Elwell had provided these pictures, because I don't remember if you were here for the meeting when they talked about.
Mark
the fact
wasn't.
that The parking at the,
Oh, right, they held back it.
the parking at the Welcome Center has been limited because they had to reserve track space for the Revolution wheels or whatever that is
The
called. Yeah.
pedalo carts.
So,
But the thought is that possibly if we could convince them to park their vehicles across Broad Street, and they could erect, there's shade under trees there, that city-owned property, and they could even erect a structure if they wanted to, for people to sit and wait, rather than having it behind the Welcome
Well,
Center.
she's not here, but I was going to ask Stacy if she could provide the committee with a copy of the settlement agreement, which has been referred to a few times. As I take it, there was commenced some type of proceeding involving New Jersey Transit and the operator of Cape May Seashore Lines. Cape May Seashore Lines is the party to a 1990s track usage agreement that the committee in its prior iteration knew about and was concerned about the rights under it. And it sounds like after whatever it is that was done, the parties decided to settle their differences. I mean, I think the complaint, or at least the gist of where the city wanted to go before, was to essentially have or seek to have New Jersey Transit terminate that trackage agreement, at least in part, because it wasn't being fulfilled.
We missed this at the last meeting.
And that was supposed to be the thrust of where the city was going. Terminate the trackage agreement, at least insofar it has affected the areas in Cape May City. But it sounds like what happened was there was a settlement, and it clarified the rights in the area of the Welcome Center, but it really didn't do anything with respect to the trackage rights, and he still maintains them, and I think his subtenant, shall we call it, or licensee, is the pedalo people, or whatever that's called,
It's Revolution.
the revolutionary cartwheeling,
Yeah.
biking. Anyway, so I think we have to take it as established now that under that settlement agreement, those people have the rights to use the tracks for the purposes they're using them now.
Yeah, I think Bob's suggestion was that if somebody representative from our committee, could meet with the fella who owns the rights to that Revolution, to see if he would be amenable to, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight, so,
Well, it might be a good idea for it to happen in the off-season, though.
yeah.
So we could make progress in that direction. But the gist of it is to create more space by having that lessee, tenant, licensee, whatever, start north of Broad Street, right?
Now, Stacy did say at one of our meetings that NJDOT had come back and said that we could not pave over the tracks. So that, essentially eliminated being able to put that additional parking. Because originally, we thought we could get 50 spaces in there, but.
Yeah,
I think it's
40
down-
to 50.
Down to like 23 or
40 to,
something.
40 to 50, and again, there's like zero hope of future rail service, and the idea that this little, I call them doodle bugs, that anything motorized or propelled by man is so important that it has to roll on the tracks by the station. I mean, to me, it's a ludicrous concept. So I don't know why they want the rails to stay in place. Rails are a dime a dozen. You can yank them out. If you ever have to put them in back again, you can put them back. It makes
Whatever.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the only thing I remember I forgot to put in here, because I think it was at the end of the meeting and I had stopped.
Zoned
taking
out
notes.
by that.
So-
That time.
Okay,
So,
one
so
of the
I mean,
things
if you would like, I mean, I would undertake to try and establish communication with whoever
Okay.
but I got to find out who these people
I think
are.
it was the person, I'm pretty sure it was the person that ran the West Cape May Planning Board for years, because I remember talking to him about this, and I realized that he was,
So he's a local guy who's
yeah, he
doing
was
this.
a principal.
Somebody said he used to work for Curtis.
That I don't know. This guy's working on he was working on something with algae and microbiotics up in Courthouse. I think he was Navy or eight, he was. Could probably find out who that is pretty easily. I was on the planning board there for 7 years or 8 years.
Yeah, Stacy said she
Well,
has his card.
Yeah, presumably somebody in the city government knows
Yeah.
who this is, and maybe we can,
Of course, he was defending, the tracks, and I said, what a waste of.
it's useless. It's just silly.
Of energy. I know.
And if it were, I mean, if it were the case that we were ever going to run rail service in, terrific. But you can't get over the canal.
Right.
So
Okay,
I'll try to find out that information and see if we can set up some kind of a discussion to determine if the operation could run north of Broad Street.
right. How's their vehicles?
Well, then,
Broad
well, but I mean,
To
if
open
you,
up parking.
if you put the vehicles there, then they're never going to come south of Broad Street again. You're going to park them, and then people are
makes
going to
sense.
go on their merry little way,
Because they have to now pedal across Broad Street.
which might have traffic coming across it by the time.
Exactly.
And I mean, it occurs to me that if one is going to offer that kind of, or make that kind of suggestion, right now they have the Welcome Center as kind of a staging platform. What's the condition of the land in that immediate area?
It's in the pictures, isn't it?
Should we talk about giving them some kind of a platform?
Well, they're at ground level. That's the,
They're all lined up.
No, but see, they got a cement platform, right?
yeah.
It looks kind of like a real operation, because they got a little thing here.
And a bicycle rim down, and the bicycle rim behind,
Yeah, this, I'm not sure.
what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I think that's like the bumper that they're using to keep the
Yes.
carts from rolling away.
The bicycle rim is, I was over there, I was walking around, and that's how they turn them around.
Oh,
Yeah,
Really?
that's how they pump it up once, and then they turn the little train around. That's how they turn them around. Because I asked.
you
how
mean
do-
it provides a lift?
Yes, how do you turn them around? And he said, stay here, I'll show you. And he showed it to me.
So because all you have to do, Dave, is basically get the flanges, right?
That's
off-
right.
Get the
That's
flanges off the
all
rail.
it is. They twist them around right there, and they're going the other way. Because I couldn't figure out how I did it, so I asked that question.
So as they come in from their great pedal.
Everybody
they-
gets
they
off.
Gets off and they twist them around so they're ready
Staff
to
mem-
go out again.
Exactly.
Well, we have to offer to give them a bicycle wheel.
Well, I know, but
Oh, true, because it's already on the track.
It's their version of a turntable.
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
The car wash.
Oh, how low we
Yep.
sunk.
Okay, back to the agenda. We've been all over the place talking about transportation routes, talking about parking locations, talking about a transportation authority. Would it make sense for us to focus on one of these areas at a time?
Well, I think it would, but wouldn't the first focus you want to do is get Jackson Street out of the way, behind us, sort of as
Well,
a-
that's separate, that's
Okay,
separate.
yeah, but, right, fine.
But for our current charge, I mean, Jackson is, I have that listed under old business, because it is,
But isn't it customary to do old business before we do new business?
whatever.
Whatever, okay, you're in charge.
Do we want to look at routing? Do we want to look at parking? I mean, and this is just my opinion, I think we need to focus on parking, where to push people to park, and then gear the transportation
Can't be me.
around that. I guess we are streaming.
I guess we are street, okay.
Is that a
Okay.
comment from the
Okay, I-
public?
Thanks, yeah, okay,
I bet I know who it was from.
okay.
No comment.
I think I got the same message.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, parking locations.
Right, agree. I mean, I agree with you. I think that unless we can get back to the idea of where people are going to be to use, and that's, but we did discuss the idea that the transportation system would depend on a number of things. I mean, there are some people who would use it who aren't going to worry about parking because they live here,
Right.
and that's not their main concern. But a formidable concern for a system is getting people places where they can park and then use
Right.
a system. So I agree, if you want to talk about
Well, and I
continuing to
totally agree
maximize
with you. And
parking.
my focus mentally has been more in the area east of Madison Avenue, partly because of where I live and that flux of people coming from that area, both on bikes and golf carts and cars and walking.
Well, it also, east of Madison, offers more opportunity to find parking spaces, which was why when
But it's
Bob
also-
Elwell did his Philadelphia
Right.
look and discovered that we weren't using anything after 5 o'clock.
And I'm not neglecting, I know you're on the west side of
Oh,
town.
no.
Because it's, your area of town is actually closer to some of the routes that the current jitney goes.
Okay.
Between, because they go down Broadway, they go down Beach, they go
Right.
up, yeah, all the way on Broadway. They go, no, they don't go Park, do they? No, they go Perry Street, West Perry. So they kind of surround your neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on the east side, they,
It's Pittsburgh.
yeah,
Right now, it's Pittsburgh. So if you can make it to Pittsburgh, you're fine. If you're somewhere Madison and West or whatever, or Madison on Madison, you have a long haul, unless you make it down to Beach or up to wherever it crosses when it comes off of Lafayette.
yeah. And one of the things that
The
we
current route.
talked about was city owns property on Pittsburgh Avenue that we had talked about.
For now.
Yeah, well, portions of it. I mean, they didn't give away the whole thing, but we don't know what.
Well, we could do that in detail, and I had when they did the hearing for the swap, my recollection is we are talking about 4 to 5 acres of city-owned property off Pittsburgh, which is offered to the state in the swap for the St. John Street, Lafayette Street Police Headquarters proposal. Exactly how much of, I mean, my recollection is the city-owned properties aggregate about 8 or 9 acres. But what I'm uncertain about is the measurement of those, Bonnie, depends on when you're actually talking about the lots, or you're talking about the lots plus the abandoned rights-of-way, right? So what looks like let's just say what looks like a half acre is actually bigger if you count the rights-of-way in terms of the abandoned streets. But we would need to look at I mean, my recollection is that the stuff that they're giving is centrally located off Cape May Avenue, and it is directly behind Pittsburgh Avenue in the existing plot, in the existing privately owned plots. that
And
are
I
there.
would have to dig back to some of the stuff that Bob had handed us in the beginning with all of the city-owned properties that, and, because he had a layout of that Pittsburgh Avenue lot.
Well, the proposal
And
of,
I'm thinking that that area is north of what they're offering for the swap.
yeah, rather than speculate, we should look at the proposal and the land
Right.
swap, because they actually name the lots. They're done by block and lot number, and we could just put them to the grid. But none of those things are gonna be terribly amenable to, first of all, they're not gonna be large enough. Secondly, they're not gonna be amenable to much parking, and they're also next to environmentally sensitive land. And there is an issue, for example, of whether you can put a parking lot in a wetlands buffer. So although the west side of Sewell Tract is less affected by wetlands than the east and south, on that west side, there are pieces of wetland, and when you do wetlands, around the wetlands are buffers of a certain depth that can be maintained. They may actually cross into those city
Well, and
lots.
it'd be interesting because, there's all that building along Pittsburgh Avenue.
Right, but we're talking about stuff behind that.
No, we're talking about, there's a lot right on
Well, there may
Pittsburgh
be,
Avenue.
yeah, there may be one lot that is part of that. I just don't
It's a fairly
recollect,
decent size.
recollect the map. We'd have to
Yeah.
key it. But I think that much like when the Facilities Committee was looking at the place to put a public safety building, and one of the.
And police station.
And one of the considerations was, should they put it in the East End? And what about the city-owned land east of Pittsburgh? And frankly, from the work on Sewell Track, there are serious environmental problems in doing a structure there. Now, I don't know about a lot.
Yeah,
for
no,
parking.
there wouldn't be a structure. And the lot could be semi-permeable, you know, like it wouldn't have to be asphalt. It could be,
But you also would run into, I
could be
mean,
seashells.
you also would run into potential DEP problems.
Oh,
It's a complicated thing, and I think perhaps, I think we should identify which lots have been given in the trade and see whether, where they are relative to what the city owned in total. I think we also need to see how the trade comes out, right? Because if they approve it,
Yeah.
then those lots are going to be
Gone.
preserved. They're going to be preserved
Well,
space.
not available for our use. I don't even, like I said, I don't know which ones they are.
But I'll go back to the proposal. I mean, I have the documents, because
And I
we,
can remember reading it and kind of trying to figure out where they were, but, and it seems to me they go into the Sewell Track.
well, when.
You know, it's not like all
Well,
along.
they border, I mean, the ECMA, the East Cape May Associates land that was part of the Sewell Track settlement of 2021, and that's 100 acres. And that is, its western border are bordered by the city lands
Right,
along that west side, inside of Pittsburgh Avenue. And I know that when we commented on the swap, and by I say we, I mean concerned citizens, commented on the swap, we actually did pick out the lots and did a list of them, but I would have to go back and refresh that.
Okay.
But I'll provide that for the committee, so we
Okay.
can see
Thank you.
what it is that, what are the real, what are all the spaces, what the city owned and what they offered to trade.
well, and the other, I know there was discussion, and it had nothing to do with our task, but there was discussion about if the state eventually turns that land into a birding paradise or whatever, there would have to be some place for those people to park to venture onto the trails. if
Absolutely,
they
yeah.
create trails.
Absolutely.
So-
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that, again, it's only a short period of time. It's been only a year since the settlement closed. And I'm not so sure there are people even fully back to work in Trenton, or the priorities of what the DEP has to do. But we've said, by we again, I mean concerned citizens, has said to the city, it would be wise to establish a liaison to work with the DEP in figuring out, and since I'm not really informed on these matters, the city may have done this, or I'm not aware of it, so I confess that, but it would be wise to have them establish a planning type of liaison that would
Would make sense to.
work with the DEP,
Or
and you
even
would
an
know,
advisory committee.
well, you would think, but again, my telephone has been quiet,
Yeah,
so,
okay.
and they would probably plan for parking, right, and pick the places. In terms of the environmental damage, or the potential environmental damage to the tract, if you were to think of it as a big rectangle, and there's still a missing piece on the south, which is privately owned, what we consider Sewell Tract, it's that part north of Maryland Avenue off Baltimore. There's about a 15-acre.
Where they're building now.
Yeah, well, no, this is north of that. You can't build, and right now, this is
Okay.
the place.
They're building on Maryland, aren't they?
They're building south of Maryland.
Okay.
But the tract I'm talking about is north of Maryland, and it's got the little signs up that say, all buyers must get all permits, right? There's a private owner trying to sell that. So, but short of that, the place, and you know it from the way the lawsuit was conducted, the place that the DEP feels is least environmentally sensitive for Sewell Tract is the northwest corner. So as you approach Pennsylvania, that's the part that the DEP had been saying, well, you know, it's mostly uplands here, and if you're, and if you want to build something, here's where we'll allow you to build it.
Yeah.
So that's likely to be the area that's
Okay,
concentrated.
other than that location, which is a lot, and of course, we had talked about the city-owned lot on Elmira Street, which, again, is in the Bank Street area, would take a clearing out of a very densely trees and fauna and whatever. And those residents right now are still, their adrenaline is still pretty high because of the electric company's construction in that area. But, you know, to put a parking lot on Pittsburgh might be easier than trying to construct the parking lot on Elmira.
My-
Elmira, I think we had calculated there could be 60 spaces,
My-
which
I mean,
wouldn't even need the jitney.
It is though the case that, I mean, and we can talk about parking east of Madison and the Pittsburgh area, but also the second place, and I agree that parking is the priority we should be talking about to serve a transportation system. We're really lacking alternatives on the north side. That's, you know, we've been talking about the Welcome Center, and been talking about potential spaces. I mean, that's a real weak spot, because it's
Well,
really
and
close to the
Elmira
center of
Street
town,
would
and
be a
would be in
solution.
that category,
Yeah.
as would anything else.
Well, and there will be parking if and when the Lafayette Street Park ever happens. There's supposed to be parking in there. Primarily for events, athletic events that might occur. But, you know, there is some potential there.
One of the, I mean, aside from creating, and I mean, I think we found, we found 3-4 years ago that the ability to create new spaces is pretty limited, because territory is limited. We kind of thought it was creating new spaces when we looked at all those empty spots east of Philadelphia Avenue. There still remains whatever you created, still remains the problem of coming into town and not knowing where to go to start looking for the parking, right? I mean, you come in.
Well, and that's the education piece of it, that, you know, we can't get into that just yet.
But that's what I always, excuse me, that's what I always said before about you have some sort of, like they have everywhere else in the universe, electronic signage that says 10 spots here, and it's,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you go anywhere.
You know, that's a very worthwhile suggestion, in the sense that getting some real-time information as people come in would really make efficient the few spaces
But it
we
could
actually
say,
have.
right, I mean, Texas, I mean, there's ways of just doing a sense.
And I don't know how you get the real-time information, but obviously the State Department of Transportation does it with respect to highway movement, for example, right? So you know if an artery's clogged.
And if you go to the Philadelphia airport, it tells you like,
Oh,
you don't,
in the garage.
right, it doesn't, you don't know how they're doing it, but it says, you know, green
And it's not
12.
really always accurate, but, you know, because I've been there.
Probably didn't get a parking space.
She lost she didn't make a plane, but otherwise
No,
it was
there's
good.
one spot here, okay, where, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm saying it's because it's real time, and for the most part,
I'm really wondering whether, whether something like the Jitney app can't be modified in a way to, you know, like, and I, having.
They could develop a parking app, too.
that's a
Yeah.
good, or that's a good idea, just to show it, to say.
So as you're, you know, you get directed to the app, signage might be one thing, but if you get directed to the app, you know, we're all, when I, without paying for it the first time, having gotten a new car, in addition to the, you know, the gratis Sirius satellite radio, along came the traffic app, so that on the roads, you would see whether it was
Right.
green or yellow or red or
Or the-
congested. So maybe there's a possibility of doing some software, which
Also
would,
think about Parkmobile, excuse me, maybe somehow you could, you know, it's all Wi-Fi and stuff, you connect and say, you yeah,
You know what, and at the last meeting, one of our new members, Job Ishtowitz, had suggested whether we had approached Park Mobile about doing dynamic pricing for, in other words, you know, if we have premium spots and, you know, that we know that parking's tight, that certain spots would be $5.
Yeah, they must have the input to know that the parking's tight
Exactly.
before they, I mean, we did come up, we did say, you know, in Cape May, where we establish all our parking prices by act of the city council, that doesn't sound terribly feasible to jack and lower the prices, but
Unless-
obviously they're
Unless
getting,
there could be adjustment in the ordinance to say,
yeah,
you know, it could be flexible pricing, which could go from here to here.
but they're obviously getting the data, right, to know.
Well, and it's
What's-
interesting because when Neil made his presentation to the council 2 weeks ago, budget presentation, he mentioned that parking revenue was down, but they hadn't gotten their report from Park Mobile yet. They don't get that till the end of the month, so.
Yeah.
You know, so they didn't have the month's revenue for Park Mobile.
So he was
yet.
missing 1 month.
Yeah, I believe so.
I wonder if that
Which would have
would have
been-
made it come out even.
I don't know if it was August or September.
Would have been a prime
dynamic
month.
parking, excuse me, I was for that before and stuff, you know, downtown, you have to pay to play, and let's face it, the people that come to Cape May are affluent, for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be ways to help people. We have the jitney and the public school. I'm not saying in terms of you have money, whatever, but in terms of my travels, it's usually dynamic parking. Some places you pay a lot more to be.
And we tried to do that, and we
Jackson
tried to,
Street,
we,
you
we,
should pay $5 an
Right.
hour to park.
we did try to do that. We tried to separate the city
Yeah.
into zones where there was a distinct difference.
And it was fought bitterly, right?
Well, it was kind of, not at the beginning, I mean, but then it just sort of disappeared as a,
And Rich came back later and said we didn't make it high enough, you know.
but at
I
least we
agreed then.
distinguished.
Yeah, but then the city raised the rest of the parking meters to $1.50, so there really isn't much of a distinction between the two.
No, I mean, parking on Jackson Street versus, you know, I mean, I could write a book on the secret place to park is right across from the Virginian, where it's a 15-minute,
You know, I was thinking about that. How, can you sit with your Park Mobile and keep upping it? Okay.
I mean, it's just ludicrous. I mean, yeah, I mean, you see nothing's changed on Jackson Street in
Because I
terms
don't
of,
see people coming and going out of that 15.
well, you know what, I mean,
Was that originally set up for check-in for the Virginia?
I would think so.
You would think, right?
I mean, again, it's one of those things where if somebody, and I do that sometimes, and I say, and I'll go on record for saying that, if I need a place to park, I park there. Now it even jams up the street even more, because a lot of times people will not park there because it says 15 minutes. So if I need 25 minutes, for example, then I'll put another 15 minutes. So now you've got one little spot, because you've got the people valeting on the left. You've got this one spot where if it's, people say I can only park here for 15 minutes, I'm gonna go somewhere else. It should all be non-parking. I mean, it's the same,
It should be a loading zone.
should be a loading zone.
Yep.
You know, I mean,
Okay, we're going to get to Jackson Street.
no, I'm just saying, I'm just
Promise.
going, because again, it just, excuse me, Madam Chairwoman, that it goes to the.
It's just the chair.
It's just a chair.
I can't say, okay,
You could, but it's
But it would be-
it's just the chair.
you wouldn't say Madam Chairman, so Madam Chair, whatever, excuse me. But like, if we're talking again about parking, and it ties in again to the rest, we still have to work out, the main thing is the center of the universe, which is Cape May center of town. And
Which is where most people are headed.
Yes, but the idea again is, like say one more time, is the idea of sensors or something to find a way to invest in that. And environmentally, you could say it cuts down on congestion, cuts down on pollution, it cuts down on, it makes public safety better to put people out there and know that they can park there and enjoy the city with less
I mean, I
congestion.
think a few years ago, we were talking about, you know, the dynamic parking, and now in the context of parking, we should be talking about smart parking to help efficiency-wise fill the zones that are able to be filled. And we're still going to wind up with a shortage, but it's better to be smart enough to know where to go.
Right, imagine even a college student or someone saying, look, we need a grant to figure out a way to show you in Cape May
Where to park.
where to park. I mean, and that would be something that would be good for the rest of the universe. We're not just talking, it's an anomaly to Cape May. It's, the idea is, how do other,
No, the most shore communities suffer from the same.
Yeah, and I wonder, is anybody really doing this? I mean, I just don't, I'm not familiar in that milieu enough to know whether in the parking world, and
Yeah.
perhaps Job can help
Yeah, I
us.
was gonna say, Job might know.
that would be a good thing for the city council to reach out to other communities and say, look, can we get a way to get some money to invest in this because we all benefit?
True. Now, remember, we're not charged with money.
Yeah, we could be kind of profligate in the suggestion.
We can, as a committee, ask for the moon.
I understand. I've already been to the moon and didn't get there.
And the other,
But there is a factor, if you do ask for the moon, and they're probably going to tell you they can't pay for the rocket fuel, right? So-
Right.
So
But-
you got to be careful what you ask
but our
for.
cohorts in this
That's what I'm saying. Let
are
somebody,
responsible for, they're responsible for.
we're
funding.
repeating Groundhog Day in a way, in terms of
Right.
what we've done, okay? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a potential lot on Pittsburgh Avenue. We have the potential lot on Elmira Street. We have the Lafayette Street Park. We have the Welcome Center. We could expand, we've talked about expanding Bank Street, which went by the wayside the last time, but I'm going to put it on the list.
Did we ever get, I mean, and you know, Bob was following this fairly closely, did we ever get any expansion in that lot at all in terms of the remarking, restriping? So you think not? So we're just where we
The
were?
last I had heard before COVID hit was that they were going to start clearing the weeds and, you know, things like that, and, you know, COVID hit and
Right.
lost.
It's my recollection, we thought another 10, 15 spaces
Right.
in that lot
Right.
that could be.
Now, it was interesting because I saw a picture on Facebook of a car sitting all by itself in a flooded lot, and I'm kind of was assuming it was Bank Street, but I don't know. Did you, your
I didn't-
customers have any cars there?
I haven't heard any,
Okay.
I'm not as much in that loop anymore because my kid,
Is Marta running?
Martin, Kyle, and again, they say like, it's brutal when you call up and say you got to move your car, and then they charge you at the Acme to park.
$6 an hour.
So I mean, you know, so I don't really, yeah,
A 50% increase.
right, so you have to go,
From the
so then you have to do, yeah, shopping when you go there too, so you get a discount.
So,
To send somebody up every couple of
Right.
hours to shop.
That's your
shop
mission.
and pull, I
You have to
mean,
pull it out at 11.
and for some reason, which I cannot recall now, we talked about ingress and egress from that lot, and in the event of a flood, opening up the driveway to the insurance lot, the privately owned insurance lot with an easement, which
Bank Street lot.
also didn't get acted on.
No.
But I think they said no, right?
I think they
Is
did.
that right?
I think I remember they were
That was-
not, they were
That
not,
was very impolite.
they were not too user-friendly or in terms of being friendly to,
The businesses up there didn't want us sending cars up that way.
In the event of a flood?
Well,
because they make money also. You've got, they charge in the summer
yeah.
$4.10, and, I mean, Swain's has been doing it since I've been here. And I think even the National Associates sometimes, or whatever was down that way, somebody's paying, you know, you pay to park. So, I mean, but it is, it should be at least in terms of a flood as a community service.
cars
They-
out.
You know, but maybe they figure if they don't do that, they'll get more insurance.
Well, I guess that's true.
okay. And we've talked before about the fact that we could direct cars to park on Pittsburgh Avenue or Beach Drive,
Or Beach Avenue.
or Beach Avenue, whichever. But we haven't done a lot of that promotion. And they announced at the city council meeting that Pittsburgh Avenue is going to be paved next.
Well, if they take as long to pave Pittsburgh as they're doing Pennsylvania, it'll be quite a while.
Well, Pittsburgh is next, and then
Now, that's county road, so they obviously have
Right.
county, I
And
sure wish
then
they do Lafayette Street.
Beach is actually, I think they said it was federal, repaving portion of Beach Avenue. And then unfortunately Lafayette Street is last on the,
Well, that's too bad, because Lafayette is obviously the narrow gateway to town, which gives everybody a bad impression.
Plus, they want to do the bump in for drop-off for the kids at the elementary school when they repave that.
Well, Pittsburgh's in pretty good shape. It's obviously got some additions that roughed up the surface, but it's not a.
And isn't there room, I mean, again, going back years ago to, doesn't the Corinthian Yacht Club have an extra, not an extra, but they have a lot for the people that go there, right by the Coast Guard base? There's it used to be a big open-air lot.
There is a lot, but I don't know how many parking places there are.
I mean, every time I've been down that way in high season, it seems to be jammed up.
Okay, so that's.
I mean, there's heavy traffic of people going to the yacht club, parking on the street, parking inside, moving boats.
Okay, you're
and
probably correct on that.
It's pretty well jammed. But none of those, if you were talking about parking in the East End, which is close to a jitney route, none of those streets like Pennsylvania going in are ever heavily parked on. There really is a lot of space on them. Yeah, there's some residential parking, but with
And what you could possibly do, I mean, thinking of that in that context, you could have, because you say, well, it takes too long, if it makes the rounds for the city, you have one area that the jitney just is confined to Pittsburgh and Beach and that area.
and that gets into the routes, but yeah.
Yeah, what I'm saying, gets into routes, but then you say, okay, well, we will tell you that every half hour, the one comes through, and that should help people to know that that's the time it comes, and therefore they don't have to wait as long, and that would reinforce your point about people wanting to park there, because they know, say, at this time, there'll be someone here. I'll bet you $1 I know who that is.
The yacht club parking is actually owned by the Coast Guard.
You should just have an earpiece and have a director's booth.
They rent it for about $1,000 a year.
Wow.
Thanks, Tricia.
Yeah. That's cheap.
I expected to see her in the audience, but obviously we're on
Just flew around here, she'll be back.
We're on
Okay.
TV. Yeah, well, if there is space, and the cross streets off of Pittsburgh during high season are pretty full with guest and residential parking. There's a very small amount of available space.
West of Pittsburgh?
West of Pittsburgh, yeah. I mean, it's just, it gets,
Because I have a friend that lives at the end of
whether,
Virginia.
yeah, if you're talking,
houses.
yeah, and,
She
and,
struggles to
and there
find
is,
parking for
there is, I mean, minimal space. There's sometimes space, but between the houses that have small driveways, few driveways, short driveways, a lot of guests, you find that on things like, I don't know, New York, Maryland, as you get into those areas, they're pretty well full. I mean, there is some space. I mean,
But east of Pittsburgh,
well, I mean, again, you don't have much east of Pittsburgh because of the Sewell track, but New Jersey's always full in high season. Obviously, Beach is. Oh, it's bumper to bumper in terms of.
east of Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, high season again.
yeah.
East is being what?
East of Pittsburgh. We're talking about what part, there's no parking on Beach, there's no parking on New Jersey that in any large quantity. I mean, people are jockeying in and out of that during the normal day. Evenings, it's all free.
But east is
But that's.
closer to the Coast Guard base? We're talking?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, anything,
That's the side.
I mean, there's, generally, we've been sort of cutting this east side into east of Madison and east of Pittsburgh in that, in that development. I'd say that overall, because of the really large size of that tract, whether you're talking east of Madison or east of Pittsburgh, there are a good number of spaces. I mean, there could be substantial additional parking there, but I suspect it would only be useful if we served it with
Jitney. I agree.
faster moving jitneys.
Okay, so I think, can anybody think of any other area of the town where there's like potential?
So what's happening, I know it's just a question, what's happening with the cross from Convention Hall and that whole thing about doing hundreds of parking I mean, the whole thing got shot down, right?
He hasn't presented anything.
Oh, he hasn't?
No, that was a,
Concept
yeah.
introduction.
like an informational.
Oh, and then he said, if you're not interested, I'm not coming, is that what I
Well,
read?
apparently, and I don't know anything intimately, but he was asking the city to consider it to be a redevelopment. So
Well, that,
the
I
city
think
has
that's extremely unlikely.
Totally said no.
Yeah, I mean,
So he has not presented any plans to the planning board or the zoning board, so.
I think it was a conceptual introduction, and, you know, when you got one and the conclusion is it's a Led Zeppelin, you then go back and,
Ooh, Led Zeppelin,
yeah.
I like
I knew you'd like that
analogy.
one. I mean,
But what does that mean? Because what does redevelopment mean? Is that special tax breaks?
He wasn't even interested. in
no,
that.
it's procedural quickness. It's short-circuiting, it's short-circuiting a number of proceedings
Okay,
that
thank
have to
you,
be
thank
taken.
you. I didn't know what that,
And I think most
Still has to deal with planning and zoning.
And most everybody believes that whatever gets put there should go through the local
Right.
process,
Right.
like everybody else has to go through the local process, and that's, I think it's going to depend on the merits of what you present and how people see it as appropriate or
Right.
not.
yeah, I just didn't know, I mean, because, yeah.
Because the parking that he was proposing was, in season, was probably only going to accommodate and not even totally accommodate his needs.
It was a 160-room proposal, 160-room
Right, and
concept.
Two-something parking spaces.
Yeah, and when you consider the rooms and the staff,
His employees,
Yeah.
yeah. and
it was basically a wash.
Plus, he was going to have dining rooms open to the public.
This, wow, that's a possibility for acronym CF.
You think? Beginning with
Clusters.
clusters? Clustered dining room.
Cluster dining room, right.
I mean, I just think, you know, sometimes you make a try to do your concept and
And
base,
that's his second presentation. He made a presentation to the city council, too,
Yeah.
like a year ago.
yeah. And I
He's
mean,
not done anything official.
Okay, I was just curious.
I would not be surprised
I mean,
if.
it would be nice if he would clear out the parking lot, although I think he's letting the businesses park in
Yeah.
that parking.
I mean, the problem since the days of the demolition of Beach Theater is you've got a site that's got a lot of potential to it.
A lot of need, too.
and
We
you-
need something down there.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, and while you wouldn't say that, some people would say, and this has been the whole question about the redevelopment, well, you would say that it's a place in need of attention. You might not say it's blighted.
No.
Right? But everybody, I think, agrees it needs attention, right? So, and not only for purposes that are standalone, but think of the potential for something that could be put there that would be harmonious with Convention Hall.
Exactly.
Right, so, and not to drag you too much far back to the Beach Theater thing again, but in the days of attempting to save that or restore it or encapsulate it, it was always the idea that a major part of the function that would happen in that place would be to provide space consistent with Convention Hall, which was too small.
Right.
And Convention Hall was a scaled-down version, which isn't good for conventions, but if you add another building,
Right.
that had significant public space to it. In the case of the Beach Theater Foundation, screens, multiple screens, conference rooms, meeting rooms, places for a theater company perhaps, and a small hotel,
Right.
and a small parking garage,
Yeah.
but again, those would be just washes in terms of I mean, I think the earlier proposals had something like a 80 or 90 parking garage when we looked at them years back.
We all lost a lot of money on that one, didn't we?
Yeah, I guess.
I remember putting a lot of money into trying to save it.
It was not well handled in many respects.
Right, I
It's
just
not a
remember.
subject for the parking committee,
Yeah, and you know what,
but it's not it was not one of our finest hours.
Having grown up here and know that the population, the wintertime population, has diminished significantly
Mm-hmm.
from when I was a kid down here. We used to support 2 movie theaters
Beach and Liberty.
Exactly.
Wow.
And in the wintertime, the beach would shut down and we just had the Liberty, but there were enough wintertime people to
I
support.
mean, it's a tragedy in America or a small town is like this, that there isn't a theater, I mean, or parking or that.
There isn't a movie theater.
Right, I mean, I tried to do that at the Batter 30 years ago with the Cape May Theater. We did that at the Batter. My wife and I sold brownies and popcorn. Now, Cape May Stage is trying to do something for a few, for the next couple months with movies. They're publicizing a movie.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, it's just, as I said, not our finest hour, and there are several communities that have taken a good approach and been successful.
Stone Harbor.
Perfect example.
Stone Harbor is brilliant.
Perfect example.
Music, theater, restaurant,
Every,
beer.
every time I go,
That's a
I
pleasure.
feel sad for Cape May.
Yeah, I agree with
on
that.
issue.
Something, right.
So I mean, you know, if despite our parking problems and our other warts of that we have,
Issues too.
yeah, I mean, but
And they
this,
have a booze jitney.
right, the Avalon Stone Harbor
They do charge for
booze jitneys.
But I mean, yeah, to have I know it's not our thing, but you imagine having a place where you could have small venues and have, you know, things that are 50, 100 people.
I can show you the plans
Yeah.
from 2010,
I could show you my canceled checks.
and we all had canceled checks.
Okay, so,
I even have your picture from the last fundraiser from.
so I have documented as many parking
Yeah.
locations as we can think of.
And I hope that our studies will result in some kind of written recommendations. We'll rationalize this stuff, and we'll do what we did before, which is present recommendations on that aspect as it relates to transportation.
I think at our next meeting, we can probably talk about routing for transportation and transportation options. It can't be just, or it doesn't have to be just the jitney. It could be, you know, free ride or similar kinds of things.
Yeah, and to my way of thinking, how that gets organized through a transportation authority is the third thing.
Right.
Yeah, you really got to think about our parking, our intelligent parking, think how that dictates routes and routes that, you know, that would make
Well,
sense.
and I created a fourth, education, you know.
Well, that was
with parking
sneaky.
and-
That was
Well, you
sneaky.
weren't looking.
And again, to think about, maybe recommend to the city that they look into again with the parking apps and things.
Right.
How to go, because that to me is very important in a way, with the way everybody's connected on the Bluetooth and internet, that,
Oh, yeah, with, our visitors are very savvy.
so I mean, it's just like, it's still a no-brainer to me.
It's our local population that is not as tech savvy, you know, because of
You know, I'm sorry that Tim isn't here, because this would be of great interest to him, the data input for that. I mean, it really would. And hopefully he'll make our next meeting, and hopefully we'll proceed to where we can.
Tim, I don't know if you, Tim himself had COVID 2 weeks ago, and then his wife got it, and now his father-in-law has it. His father-in-law is well into his 90s, but he is recovering, but he was still testing positive.
I'm
so
sorry,
Tim
yeah.
didn't want to endanger any of us.
No. So
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, I think this, again, we're good, we're certainly smart enough to give the people who need to hear this recommendations. It's whether or not people have even the business community should all be behind this and things. What we're talking about is less congestion, quality of life, bicycles going every which way. I mean, it's total chaos. I mean, it's,
And one of the things.
But it may go slower if we put all the speed limits in effect.
Well, they approved it last night.
We'll see how that works out.
that'll be good for the police for revenue.
If you can find the last radar stop for going over a speed limit in Cape May, you're better than I am.
No, but I mean, they just get you from behind, right?
They can get you in any direction.
Well,
Right.
But-
red light, you know, the cameras at the red lights, they can get you that way, but speeding, I don't know how, I think they have to physically do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually,
That's not.
yeah.
Jackson Street. I did walk down Jackson Street last Saturday, Saturday a week ago during October.
Because it was this Saturday, you had a rainy
Yeah,
experience.
I didn't walk down Jackson this Saturday. And I confirmed that the configuration that we have on here, slide 6, is still the same, all the same parking
Great,
meters.
But there was added another, what do you call it, another private parking, right? They're like C2s,
Well, is Sea-Doo's, there's one handicap spot, is that theirs still?
yeah, and then there's one at the other end of the street.
Well, there's 2 permit parking down in front of Curtis's house.
And that's redunculous too, because that's used a lot for people who don't live here. I mean, I'm just going on record, I mean, next door, they rent out their place. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
rat anybody out, but I mean,
You realize this is a public meeting.
I understand that, but I'm saying, for the good, I mean, it's just the same thing, I'll say
No, of
the
course.
same way.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
You know, down the road, if nothing happens, we'll put valet parking on the left side of Jackson Street. I'm not making a threat, it's just the reality of what it is.
well, hopefully,
Just want a
our
solution.
reasonable approach will prevail.
Right, I just want to make everybody happy, but we are also part of the problem, so we're asking for a solution.
So Bonnie, I understand you're saying that your review shows that the slide's accurate,
Yes.
which is great. You don't need to change the slide very much, then.
Well, I know, and I did actually, some of the numbers were wrong, so I did fix those.
Okay.
So the proposal, are we still in agreement with the proposal to, and in the, I think in the notes here, I did mention that we could propose making some of the loading zones, daytime loading zones and metered zones for the evening.
I mean, that's a start, I think, again, the way things are, you get to, yeah, I mean, that's whatever compromise, but a lot of times, it's just like, I've been here 40-some years now, even with the garbage trucks, you say you can only come at a certain time, they'll say, ha, ha.
We come when we can.
We come in, and you're not gonna say, don't come now, so,
They don't even use the loading zones, do they? They just.
oh, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
do they? Okay, I thought.
If they can, they're very lucky. If not, they're gonna back up traffic forever.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just a question of what's
Well,
there.
I mean, the purpose of our suggesting only partial time loading zones was, I think, to reduce the loss of traffic, parking revenue. And I'm not so sure how much how many temporary loading zone things we're talking about, 2 or
And
3?
the other idea is, let's just say you have 6, 7 parking meters left on Jackson Street. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Let's say we have 7 parking meters left on Jackson Street.
In our proposal, what was the remaining
I
count
don't-
left of
I've sort of-
of meters? After we got through 4?
4.
So that, our proposal was.
There's only 4 left?
Was a significant cut in meters.
Yeah.
I think that there's nothing down at the
Because
other
there's
end.
12 now.
I'll have to go down and look. So what I'm saying is,
And we were suggesting converting 8 spots into loading.
so I'll go on record and say that, add a quarter in the historic district, and the parking meters become mute. A quarter an hour or something, then you're not, you know.
Well, but some of them, we were making loading zones to accommodate check-in and check-out.
Right.
Kind of things.
Right, I mean, there's how many hundreds of rooms on Jackson Street?
Right,
Be-
exactly, for both sides, actually.
Yeah,
when you
the
think about
Virginia, the Carroll Villa, that's 40 rooms right there.
And then you have all the condos.
Right, and all the condos, and you have 41 Jackson where my father used to live.
Right.
And then you got next door Curtis's, and then you got the Seven Sisters,
Yep.
and then you got condos. So we're not talking about a small number. So even if you, again, put the 2 people or so that need, like the C2s, that it's at that end of the street, and there's 2 or 3 places that they are honored for what they need, then there should not be an argument. This C2s are perfect, but leave going all the way down from the Virginian down as a loading zone.
Well, and that's what we had suggested doubling the existing loading zone.
Yeah, well, that's what we should do.
I mean,
Which is more in front of the batter. But the other spots that we, in fact, we took out the 15 minutes.
Yeah, I know
made it
that,
a loading
right.
zone.
Yeah.
Right, that should be.
Yeah, and we suggested moving the 2 paid spots down to Beach Drive, and then making that a loading zone.
So we could have more contiguous
Right.
loading.
Right.
Pushing the,
Right.
pushing the paid stuff closer to Beach Avenue.
And if you go around the corner, when they're double parked there for all the stores there, that's also a CF. And then if you go around the corner,
That was
going
always Tim's,
Bill's Place too, that it should all be dedicated for, so all these businesses have the support to get the supplies when they're needed.
I have to say, I mean, without being particular about 4 meters versus, I think the law, and temporary loading zones versus full-time loading zones, I think the loss of revenue is immaterial. I really don't think it makes a lot of sense in the beginning to try and make temporary loading zones.
well, and in reality, the larger traffic on Jackson Street is probably in the evening anyway, for meals, with the 2 restaurants.
Daytime is worse.
Is it?
I mean, again, depends. In the summer, it's all bad, but,
I mean, it's just bad from beginning to
I
end.
mean, I'll just go on record this way, maybe it'll impress the city council even more. How many meals do you think the Mad Batter does?
And
Is this a
cover
quiz?
breakfast-
No, just take a guess.
Just dinner?
No, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Hundreds and hundreds.
Thousands, right. So let's just stop at, I pay my taxes, I get my thing. Let's just say 100,000 people.
Yeah.
That's a modest appraisal. And how many did they do next door? Maybe they do 75,000. I mean, so right there,
Are they just, do they do all 3 meals?
no, they do dinner, but they do parties, they do the bar, they have 20 rooms. So I
Yeah,
mean,
so what about the people that stay there? Do they get breakfast?
I think now they're doing breakfast.
Okay.
But I don't, they change, but I'm just saying is the amount of people for the infrastructure of that street demands attention.
Oh, but to me, I think that's the reason why we're
Yes,
going
no,
back
I'm
at
agree.
them. We're
I'm
going, we're
saying
going
that's
back
why-
at them because what was proposed then made sense. It
it still
wasn't, it
does.
wasn't acted on, and I think we're all saying here.
No, I agree. I'm
It
just
still
saying.
makes sense, and just to finish up my view, I don't really think any loss of meter revenue is as important as solving the flow-through on that street. So, I would maximize the loading zones. I would be sure that the valet service is shifted over to the west side of the street.
you.
And that the east side of the street remains clear for traffic southbound. I mean, to me, it's I don't call it a no-brainer, but it's a slow brainer. I mean, it's something that, because when we first looked at this, and remember the first recommendation was, well, maybe we should have some professionals make a traffic
Nobody wanted to pay for
study.
that.
And, well, there was no money for it, but
Right, but
then
I'm saying, yeah.
we looked at it and said, it doesn't take a pro, it just takes some experience and some common sense to solve this.
And conceptually, again, think about the garbage trucks. If you make it so that they come down, because you got recycling garbage trucks, how many come down every day for all the other houses? And if they have the ability to stay on the right side of the street, it'll certainly, hopefully make for no encumbrance.
More room on the left side of the street.
Well, and you've got the trolleys, and you've got the buggies.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, and I just tried to allude to this, and that was when I tried to beef up the slide. You can't have a serious consideration of routes of a transportation system in this town unless you're going to say, we're doing our best to take potential routes and main arteries, and Jackson's got to be a potential route, and make them better, make the traffic flow on them better. So this is in aid of whatever we may choose as a route for a transportation system.
And to that point, let's just say Jackson Street was that. The last corner of Jackson and Beach, then when the public transportation or the jitney comes, they can pull over on the right side of Jackson Street. You get all the workers and all the people and all the tourists who come from Beach Drive, Jackson Street, Uncle Bill's. They can all go there and get the jitney and not stop traffic on Beach Drive or something, because you'll have an egress on the right side going down by Hot Dog Tommy's.
Yeah. So
You really don't
whatever,
want the jitney to come down Jackson, do you?
Well, it depends. It could
What I'm saying
potentially,
is-
could potentially do that.
But I'm saying
Which
conceptually.
is why we want to get the
That's,
route
when
free.
you're talking about a master transportation plan, if everybody's on the right side, then you're keeping them off Beach Drive until they make the turn, and then you have a much more orderly progression
I mean,
of
it
movement.
is a notorious blockage and it's just a situation that cries to be improved.
And I don't know of any other north-south street in Cape May that is as congested as Jackson Street.
It's a one-way street.
I mean, it's, and it's
One lane.
got so much, it's got so much happening on it.
Yeah.
So many people, so many cars, so many trucks, so many vehicles
Even
on it.
Decatur. I mean, Decatur.
Decatur is sleepy compared to
Decatur is
Jackson.
sleepy compared, and now that I have a property on Decatur, I mean, I can see that. But another thing that's happened is that all my staff right now,
Or parking.
and that's going to end in a couple of weeks. So there drops another 25 cars back on the street.
So what are you going to use the lot for? You're going to use
Yes.
Customer parking,
So,
presumably.
I mean, they're going to go back on the streets, so that there's good news and bad news. When the good news is they had a summer
Well,
of free
parking?
parking.
And the good news is that the meters will go off.
I would say, and, you know, not to keep beating this horse to death, but whatever formal approval and action we have to take to move this ahead toward the city council, we should do.
Yeah,
If you want, I'll offer a resolution. If not, we can just have a consensus that we need to
Yeah,
go with the
Thank you.
presentation.
That's great. I mean, that to me, as we talked about when I came in all fired up, is do the things that need to be done first, and then do your transportation system around it, because otherwise, you've got that CF again.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's not so good to have a transportation system when you can't
When
move
it's
on the
flawed
street,
from the-
can't move on the
When
streets.
it's flawed from the beginning, it's like, you know,
So let's solve our most
Okay.
important blocked street. And so I would say, let's do what we have to do to finish the presentation, polish it up, ask for time in front of the city council and present it.
that's
and-
great.
and
That's
hope
very
that-
positive.
and-
It's very positive.
And hope they'll do a better job this time than last time.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, it's like trying to run against a hurricane. It's like you're going to get blown away.
So,
Okay. Anything miscellaneous that anybody wants to?
oh, and you'll finish, you'll complete the slide presentation and maybe
I did.
interface with
It was
Stacy
good then,
about
and it's
getting
good
us.
now.
Your piece is already in.
Okay, thank you. Well, I mean, I would just figure that would tie us to the current resolution.
Right.
And people wouldn't accuse us of just wandering without a purpose connected to transportation. And so if you get us some airtime, you can make our
Okay,
presentation.
I will.
But that's great. I mean,
John
this is
Stacy.
about as positive and straightforward as one can be, and if not, it's like, yeah, it's,
Okay, I'll reach out to Stacy. You're going to see what you can come up with the the Pittsburgh Avenue.
The lots, ID the lots, yeah.
you already got the address of the train, because that came,
Oh, I did receive,
yes, that came a little while ago. Thank you. So, it's like having a genie.
Or a secret monitor.
Right, at least we know who it is, so we don't have to worry about that.
okay. And what were we going to do about the settlement? Were you going to research that too?
You mean the Cape May Seashore lines? I guess, I mean, I would just, an issue around here is in normal circumstances, when somebody's got a document, you say, hey, do you have a document, and could you send me a copy? And in this city, often when you say that, they say, oh, submit an Oprah request.
Yeah.
So I'll do what I can to get the document, but it just seems to me that it's,
Are you willing to do an Oprah if you need?
of course, but it would be silly.
What is an Oprah?
The Open Public
Public
Records
Records.
Act request so that you can get, in the real world, in the private world, of businesses and public companies, there are lots of sources of information, and you ask for documents, and you may pay for them, but you get them because they're just public. The city's documents are public too, but to get them, you just can't write somebody, you have to submit a formal request.
Consumer,
City
whatever,
clerk's
consumer knowledge, consumer information,
City clerk's got to process your request.
got to pay for every page.
Well, no,
No?
but it just takes time. And
If you receive it through email, you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah,
If
so,
you want it printed, you have to pay for it.
Okay, well, that's
but it
great.
would be nice, what I'm saying, it'd just be nice to say to X, by the way, can you just send me a copy of the settlement agreement?
Right, you don't have-
With-
right, you don't have to
Without having
print
to make
everything
a
out, it's
formal.
email, it's done.
There's a form, you actually have to fill this form out and put the right parameters in and everything, and then the city clerk processes it. I mean, yes, it works in a situation where you can get access to documents, which I just come from a world of public disclosure where
What kind of law did you do?
corporate finance and securities.
Wow, I'd vote for you.
Yeah, well, I'm not running for anything. Anyway, I will try to get the settlement agreement.
Okay,
I have the trackage rights agreement, so presumably, and we all saw that
Right.
last time, so presumably this keys to that.
I would think so.
God knows why that creaky document still stays in, in
All right, then, are we done?
motion to adjourn.
Second move.
Aye.
35.
Thank you, a good meeting. I mean, that's,
Thank you.
So I guess you'll figure out when the agenda opens up for us to,
Yeah,
and when is our next meeting?
2 weeks,
which would make it,
October the 17th.
Yeah, just the items we discussed tonight are very important, and that's why I'm very happy to serve on this committee, because these topics, the traffic flow on a important artery is Jackson Street, of course, the parking, trying our best to get real-time information to the people is exactly why I'm happy to be serving on this committee, so.
And we welcome you.
The problem I have for the 19th,
No, 17th.
you may have a problem on the 19th, but it's,
it says the 19th, oh, maybe, okay, excuse me.
12 and, 14 and 5. It is the 19th, I'm
It is the
sorry.
19th.
his calendar is not lying, it's the 19th.
19th.
That's the meeting of where I get the award from Avalon. I mean, the county chamber gives my family the award,
Where's that being presented?
Avalon.
In Avalon?
What time?
It's 5:30. I could probably miss the first, I could come, but till like 6, I mean, the first hour is cocktail hour. I don't need to do that.
Okay,
So I'll commit to coming, we have to start at 5:15, right?
Let's start.
yeah,
Then I'll be here at 5:15. I'll go till at least
and we'll start
6. Is that good?
Yep.
That's the best I can do to help make a quorum.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I mean,